Dreamweavers welcomes you to an exploration of cars and other kinds of transportation in dreams. A car is an automobile, so we could kind of out of the older word get some sense of its symbolic or metaphoric meaning self-motivating. You can drive a car wherever you want it to go. Unlike a train, which has one track, a car is able to make a choice about the direction it goes, right? So a car is one's own motivation. For example, I saw a dream last night in which a woman who's really struggling with her work and feeling like she may not be able to do this kind of work much longer, had a dream in which her car had run out of oil. That the car had run out of oil, and then after it ran out of oil, the transmission broke, and the whole thing fell apart, and she couldn't drive at all anymore. So the car would symbolize her sense of her motivation about this particular job at this particular time. One needs to pay attention to the kind of car that's in the dream. Is it a sports car? Is it a sedan? Is it like my dad's old 55 Chevy, right? Or is it a new sleek car that I've never had before? The kind of car can say something about the particular kind of energy that the car is carrying for the dreamer. The color of car can often tell about a feeling one has for that particular job or way of getting around. Like if it's a red car, it might have to do with passion about the work. If it's a blue car, it might be a feeling of a kind of spirituality about the work. So one needs to pay attention to the kind of car it is. Are there personal associations with this particular kind of car or way of getting around in the world? Are there particular personal associations with the color or the make of the car? The car symbolizes one's way of getting around. Now, we also want to pay attention to the condition of the car in the dream. Often, as in the woman's dream which I mentioned, there's something wrong with the car. Like this woman had run out of oil. Oil, I would think, would be metaphoric of good feeling in her work. Here's a dream of another woman in which the car has a defective steering wheel.
I have the duty of transporting a group of teenagers from place to place. I'm not happy about this duty, but I do not consider rejecting it. One of my problems is that the car is not appropriate. It's a large automated wagon with a defective steering wheel.
Another common image of something broken about the car is a flat tire. Often people dream of one or more tires being flat, and that might refer to, we go on all four functions, and functions being our thinking, our feeling, our sensation, and our intuition, and sometimes a flat tire would refer to our fourth function is not working anymore. Sometimes the car won't work anymore, period. The whole car is broken down. Here's such a dream.
My car has broken down on a mountain road. The engine has overheated and all the water has boiled out. I have a long way to walk to get help, and my legs are very, very tired.
Another significant dream theme about cars is the theme of who's driving. Am I driving? Am I in the driver's seat? I, the dream ego, needs to be in the driver's seat. So am I in the driver's seat going my own direction under my own steam with a car that's running right, or is the car in bad condition? Or am I being driven? And often the image of somebody else driving me, like I might be driven by somebody I know or don't know, has to do with being driven. The dream shows us that we're driven by a complex. This woman had two dreams about being driven by men in her life.
I am hitchhiking. An old but zippy sports car stops to pick me up. My dad is driving it. I'm riding in a Jeep with the top off. John is driving. He's driving treacherously close to the edge of the water, and I'm concerned that the car will tip into the water, but it doesn't.
So this woman would need to do associations with her father, her dad, and with John, and to get some notion of in what way are these particular qualities, the qualities associated with her dad, How are those qualities driving her? Or on the other hand, how is John, the qualities that she associates with John, maybe driving her in a very dangerous way, right? Like close to the edge, as it were. Another common theme about cars in dreams is a lost car or a stolen car. I go somewhere and I park my car and I go shopping and I come back and I can't find it. Listen to a dream about a lost car.
I run to my car to go home. I drive recklessly, running red lights, turning ahead of long streams of cars. Then I see 2 accidents. I park and walk back to look at one of the accidents. When I head back towards where I'd left my car, I notice I do not have anything on below the waist. Then I cannot find my car. I look at car after car, but mine is gone. I am frantic because I need to be at home.
This woman's dream might indicate that in some way she's in her own car, going her own direction, but she gets sidetracked, as it were, by noticing these accidents. And in her concern about other people, she not only loses her car, she loses her clothes. It's as if her sexuality is exposed. She no longer has appropriate clothes on either. And she can't find her car. She can't find her way of getting around anymore. So the dream might be instructive about how she loses motivation. You know, for example, in this dream, she gets distracted and becomes involved in other people's lives in a way. So she loses her own way of going, her own self-motivation, as it were. In other dreams, the car is actually shown as an enemy to the dreamer, a destructive element to the dreamer. For example, listen to this dream in which the car runs over the woman.
I'm crossing the street. A car almost runs over me. This really surprises and startles me because the car approached the intersection slowly enough to see the red light and to see me in the crosswalk. It ran the red light and barely missed me, only because I jumped quickly out of the way. When I looked into the car, I saw it had no driver. It was empty. Someone had started it moving, and it was still going.
So this car itself is like an autonomous complex. It's going by itself, which might be, the kind of thing that happens particularly to us women, and I think to men too, is that we might get motivated about a project or a direction in our lives, and we get a lot of energy for it, but then suddenly the project or the energy takes us over, and we no longer have a choice about what we're doing. It's as if we become compelled then to keep going the same direction, and one could say it's as if the thing runs over me, right? We can say I'm run over by my work, I'm run over by my relationship or whatever, but the thing that starts out as a motivating, moving, energetic force ends up really crushing the ego in this dream, which is a warning perhaps to the dreamer. So cars and our relationship to the car in our dream talk about our relationship to our energy, to our motivation. And often car dreams come up when one is struggling with a depression or a choice about which direction to go in life, for example. There are other ways of getting around, of transporting, of moving from one position in life to another, or one psychological space to another. And one of those ways is the bus, But the bus is different than a car. A bus can be ridden by everybody, and a bus goes where it's going. You don't get to say where you go in a bus, right? You get on and follow its direction. So the bus is considered a collective carrier. Anybody can ride the bus. We all share that, and it's an already charted route. Traditions, it could represent going the collective way. Here's a dream about riding a bus.
My husband and I are making a trip by bus. In the crowd boarding the buses, we get separated so that we get on different buses going to the same destination. We're not disturbed about being on different buses, but we enjoy the fact that our buses make the same food and rest stops where we are together.
So this woman's dream reflects that both she, the dreamer, and her husband and or her masculine side have a relationship to the collective, that they're going along a collective path for a while, even though there's one collective for the masculine side and one collective for the feminine side. There's this lovely way that they meet at various places for nourishment and to enjoy each other, which is a nice relationship to the collective and to the masculine feminine in the dreamer's nature. And the dreams, may be compensatory for a not so nice relationship with that, or it may be supplemental and symbolizing that this is actually a way of symbolizing how they run their lives. Another common dream image about transportation is airplane. I particularly like this dream about airplane because it shows the dreamer's relationship to the airplane and a transition in her life.
A large silver airplane lands in a big field which is surrounded by tall rushes. A stream hidden from sight flows on one side of the field beyond the rushes. I get out of the plane, followed by a small group of women. We're all dressed in 18th century clothes, long and flowing. I lead the group through the field, past some of the rushes. I part them and point out the stream to the women.
In this dream, the airplane, which is the way of getting along up high, it's fast, it carries a lot of people, it's airborne, it's long, sleek, silvery, very masculine image, airplane's kind of phallic too, right, in its power and thrusting and going forward. In this dream, that energy in this woman has come to ground. It's come down into the rushes in nature itself, and it's hidden in nature now, parked along a stream. So it's as if this very high-powered, fast-moving energy has landed in a very natural, lovely, feminine setting with the stream going by. So the women in 18th century costumes would mean that the dreamer would want to do associations to airplane, her personal and the archetypal associations, as well as to 18th century women. What does it mean to her? What were women like when they wore 18th century clothes? What were women like in the 18th century? And the dream foretells that she's wanting to really make a relationship with this kind of high-flying, thrusting energy and bring it down into nature and close connection with the feminine, with nature, and with her own sense of herself as a woman. And the dreamer is really working to do that and make that integration of the airplane energy. Other means of transportation that often show up in dreams are trains. I've seen a lot of train dreams with very fast-moving men. They get on the success track. Trains go on one track. They go the way the track goes. And they're high-powered. They can carry a lot of energy. They can do a lot of work. And when you're on the fast track, right? And sometimes men have dreams warning them of being too much caught in a fast track, that they're in a train that's in some kind of problem. It's headed down the track to some destructive, on some destructive course. So train would be that energy, that motivation in us that is, again, not individually directed but related to the collective. It has to do with the kind of energy that carries a lot of weight and that moves along at great speeds in one direction and has no choice about getting off its course. Another image that comes up often is bicycle. Bicycle is a very paradoxical image. For one thing, it's the kind of transportation we use until we're old enough to drive a car, right? So it's a way of getting around for young people, and sometimes can imply an adolescent or earlier than adult way of getting around in the world. One hasn't developed a relationship to an automobile yet. On the other hand, the bicycle has the wonderful quality of being the rider rests between these two wheels with spokes, which are like images of wholeness. So, and riding a bicycle means that one is very connected to the countryside. As you ride along the roadside, you can smell the flowers, as it were. It's a very particularly individual, self-motivating, individual, independent way of getting about. So cars, buses, airplanes, trains, bicycles, any other mode of transportation would point to our asking ourselves about the way we're getting about or about our motivation in life. Jim and I spoke at length about cars and his dreams and the meaning the cars had for him.
The one that I like the best is just a dream of a red sports car.
Wow.
And that one has cropped up time and again, not for years, but let me give you a typical car dream in which I'm driving, and I can still, this is another dream that has come back when I think of my car dreams and my driving dreams.
Yeah.
This one and maybe another one are ones that I've spent a lot of time on, and I can kind of sit with, and the feeling comes in. But both of them involve coming to, one of them driving up a hill, and both of them...
You're driving.
Yeah, and coming to a stop sign, and then coming to a turn in the road and having to make the turn. Now, in this one, I came to the I believe the stoplight, and I could either take the high road or the low road. And like in the
song, right?
Or in the Frost poem, the road not taken.
Right.
And another dream came. I can go a little bit further. I think the one about taking the high road or the low road and ending up in the same place preceded the next dream, where I come to an intersection as though we were going to enter a mall. I think if you had crossed the street, you could have gone down into the parking lot. But I decided to turn left. And so I had probably carried this dream a little bit further in my psyche.
Yes.
And I do turn left. And then, as I recall, it involves driving up to a school. Now, I'm a high school teacher, so it was either a high school or a junior high school, and I believe I get out of the car and go up to the front desk of the high school as though I was reporting from work, although my car was still parked, and the engine was running, and maybe even parked illegally on this busy street in front of the school.
So the car's still in gear, ready to go,
Probably,
and you get out and go into work. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think I only went to sign in. I was going to come back to the car and maybe park it or something, which is not unusual. But I did eventually make that turn, and that's a little bit different than the car dream. The car dream about the red sports car might be an altogether different dream, but I've had, if I can just keep on going, I've had another recurrent dream of a green 1952 Plymouth.
Really?
Which is the car my dad had when I was starting to learn to drive, and in fact my uncle had one at that time, my mother's brother. And so when I started thinking about cars, it was the 52 Plymouth, and I've had the recurrent dream of that thing.
And what does it, are you driving it or riding in it or what?
Oh, geez, I can't even remember that much of it.
But that's certainly very different than your red sports car, right?
No, though, but I've had a lot of dreams, and then eventually the red sports car, I can recall, turned out to be a white sports car. And I've had that one a couple of times. And in one case, it was a white sports car with me driving and my best friend sitting next to me, and then two more people in the back seat. And I kind of liked that one because it was the quaternity.
Such a feeling of wholeness,
and the fact that my friend was next to me.
Yes.
And he's occurred in my dreams over the years. When I have dreams of male figures, it would be friends like him or other friends.
So talk about that a minute, Jim. What do you associate with that friend? What qualities does he carry for you?
Well, he's an extroverted, and I'm a very introverted individual, and we kind of complement each other based on that, and we've been friends over the years. He's very sensitive, but he, I think, in my life, has been a great experience. But right now, largely, it's a good experience to show how I have taken steps to change my life, to move to the, he still lives back in the Midwest, and the things he's done, we were two peas in the pod back when we were in college. Yeah. But we've changed pretty drastically, and and
your life
and
is really...
I can feel that the steps I've made largely due to ways I've made to attempt to understand myself and
Yes.
to make the effort that I have to change my life
Yes.
were steps that were undertaken because I wanted to, and I devoted the energy to do it, and I did it consciously,
Yes.
and with the help of my psychotherapy, among other things.
Right. Which included your dream
And, you
life.
know,
Yeah.
on the other hand, my friend, I can't honestly say, you know, that my life is better, but therefore the grace of God
Yeah.
would I be, you know,
Yes, yes.
in his case.
But when you have a dream then with this would be, in Jungian terms, called a positive shadow figure. He's somebody you really appreciate, right?
Sure.
And so when you have a dream that you're driving a car you like,
Mm-hmm.
a white sports car, with your friend beside you,
Mm-hmm.
that's really a lovely dream of integration, isn't
Yes,
it?
that's what I felt, especially with the four people
Yes.
in the car. Whenever, four is like a magic number in my
Yes,
dreams.
that it says you have all four corners
Yes.
operating together, right?
Yeah.
And white car, what would you associate with a white sports car?
Well, I had a white sports car for. In fact, I don't even know if I had that white sports car after that dream or before it. But certainly the red sports car dream is a lot more sexual, has sexual connotations. You know,
The red.
red car in the Freudian sense was always a phallic symbol. The white, you know, it since it was a convertible and the openness to it was nice. It
And
was
white?
functional. The
What would you-
whiteness is.
Yeah, what would you say associate with white?
Well, you know, white is the most popular color for any car.
Is it? No, I didn't know that. Really?
My wife and I just bought a white car. So
Really?
I learned that shortly after.
Is that right, that most
But,
cars are
yeah,
white, huh?
At least right now. And but the only thing I can say is in contrast to the red one, it's more practical and functional. And you know, the color symbolism of white, I think, is very elaborate. So I don't want to really get into
Very
that.
elaborate, but
Yeah.
the whole notion of purity,
Yeah.
whiteness, right, or the white.
Well, you know, the thing that occurs to me though is, you know, white is the color of death in Eastern cultures,
Yeah.
but I don't know how that should influence me. You know, and white is the most popular color for cars in Japan, and I had that dream after I moved back from Japan.
Well, what about, you know, if we went on with it just a little bit to set the tone of that dream, that white in alchemical terms would be the whitening or the albedo, when things have calcified, meaning they've come into form in a way, right? And so it's as if in this dream you're in a mode of operation, like driving a car that fits with the collective,
Yes,
right? That's taken
definitely.
form, and you got all four parts with you, right?
Yeah, and not only that, I'm at the wheel. I'm the
Yes,
driver,
yes,
and I'm in
yes.
control. And
Yes, and it's even convertible. You can be open or closed, right? And you're in the driver's
that's the
seat.
thing that appealed to me the most, though, is
Right.
the fact that I was in charge, and it's like being in charge of my life.
Right.
And so that
That
was
being
a
in
good
the
sign.
driver's seat means that you're in the right place. You're
Yes.
not driven by some other complex or part of yourself. The ego is doing the driving.
And to have my friend with me would be like to be in touch with another side of my personality,
Right.
too, because
Right.
he often took that aspect of my own personality in our relationship, and he saved me from having to do it myself.
Yes,
so it was
yes.
a easy
That in
thing to
earlier
do.
dreams he might have been driving the car and you're riding in the back
Yeah,
seat or
I can't
something.
recall,
Huh?
yeah.
What about the other car? The contrasting car is the Plymouth, right? That was your uncle's.
Yeah, now that's old and you know, inefficient,
Yeah.
but still dependable and sturdy, and
Right.
you know,
And the way the men in the family went, right? Your
Yes.
father
yeah, definitely.
went that way. Your uncle went that way.
Definitely, you picked up
Yeah.
on that very well. That was,
Yeah.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
And you know, it appeared in several dreams, but you know, it would be like the conservative side of my own personality.
Yeah.
You know, I can see that part cropping up again in my
It
life.
has deep roots in your family, huh?
Yeah.
Of that conservative, practical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know what's the real me. You know, like I have the old conservative 52 Plymouth.
Right.
I have the open sports car, which
Yeah.
is integrated, but then I have the red
Yeah.
sports car. And, you know, in fact, I had a picture of a red, expensive sports car in front of my typewriter, in front of my word processor for several years in my house, and tried to get some inspiration from that. And I tried to get a little model car and have it sitting in front of me, but no, I don't have that dream anymore.
A little sex symbol to drive around in. Huh?
Yeah, maybe.
What did it feel like? The red car was activated some energy then for your writing, or?
No, I did it because I wanted to dwell on that image.
I see.
And to try to basically an extension of active imagination and try to work with it.
Yes.
But no, I don't have that dream anymore. And the only thing I can say about that dream is, I'm kind of cautious of having a dream and then having that dream set the tone for my real life.
Yes.
Whereas, I have a friend just recently that was telling me about a dream of something happening, and then that actual thing did happen. And I said, be careful that you don't take that dream literally and saying that the dream was the cause of the thing happening or whatever.
Right.
So, in other words, I'm kind of fortunate or glad I never went out and bought a red sports car.
Good, because that would be to concretize the dream and mix levels, wouldn't
it? That's what I'd be very cautious against, and I didn't do that.
Right.
But
I think that's a really important point, that to take the dream literally and make it concrete would be to go buy a red sports car. To take it symbolically is to put it on your typewriter and let it fascinate you, right? Let it energize you.
Yeah, I have made mistakes like that in the past.
Yeah.
And I ended up looking foolish in one instance.
Many car dreams involve crossroads. Remember Jim's dream about the choice between the high road and the low road? Dana had such a dream about a crossroad. We explored her associations to the car in the dream, looking for clues about what choice she's being asked to make.
I was at a crossroads waiting for a particular car to come by, and all these old classic cars kept coming by, and old trucks too. The cars were really rounded and classic, really old, and they all had various kinds of drivers in them.
So what about a crossroads? What would you associate with a crossroads?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is a decision. Yeah. You're kind of there where there's 4 different directions, and
which way to go?
Pick one. You gotta pick
Was
one.
this a dream at a particular time in your life that you were making such a decision in your life? Were you at a crossroads in your life?
Probably. I'm trying to think of when it was. I think I was about to make a decision to move, physically move my residence, and commit to a relationship. So there was a few things going on at that time.
You were deciding.
Yeah, there really was. Now that I think about it,
yeah,
when it was.
That it really was a crossroads in your life of making a decision, and it looks as if the only way of going would be like a classic car way. Do you have any associations with classic cars?
Well, my boyfriend has a '58 Chevy truck.
That's pretty classic.
and it does have, and it did have old trucks in here too. I've been to some old car shows and things. I like the design of older cars. They
In what way, Dana?
Well, they just seem to reflect an age maybe where things were simpler.
Yeah.
Things were more thought out, less harried, less fast.
Yeah, right.
They kind of cruise.
Yeah, the notion of cruising, right.
They weren't really built for speed.
Right.
And they're kind of rounded and soft.
Yeah.
The 50s, 40s and 50s cars. That's what these were like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that I say that kind of felt like that's what I was doing.
Was picking that kind of...
Yeah, because the situation that I was in, which I thought was pretty unhealthy for me, I'd realized at the time, I after I'd gotten a divorce about 4 or 5 years earlier, I lived with roommates again. and it was a nice big house by the beach, but it was still kind of like back in college, you know, the roommate kind of thing, and it got to be pretty unhealthy for me, and I felt like it was really complicated, you know, and I felt I needed to really live by myself again, and that's what I
simplify.
did. Yeah, and 2 months after I had this dream, that's what I did. This was right around the time that I was doing that, and I really just wanted to go live somewhere where I had a little garden. It was my house, you know. I could come home and do what I want and not have to deal with so much interpersonal relationships all the time.
That you wanted a way of going in your life that was simpler and more classic, like a soulful.
That's probably pretty accurate. Yeah.
And you're touched when you remember that actually in your dream, that's what was shown to you, right?
Yeah.
That's what you were offered at the crossroads, was that image that pick us.
There was no other choice there. There was no fast motorcycles or, you know, anything that really represented what would be a more complicated, speedy,
modernistic
kind of
way.
lifestyle. And that's kind of been one of my one of the things I've really been trying to do is simplify my life more and more, you know, because I really feel like it helps me to stay centered a lot more, and it is a lot more soulful, like you were saying.
Get a classic car.
Yeah.
I got soulful because it was as if you were saying the texture of it is rounded and simple and more about aesthetics than about how fast you can get somewhere.
Yeah, definitely not a Ferrari. Or even an old Ferrari. It's much more rounded and soft. It's just speed is just not as important as it was when I was in my 20s, when I was younger, and it didn't get me obviously where I wanted to be. It was kind of the wrong way for me to go. So that feels pretty true.
Why don't you kind of use some colors and some crayons to see what kind of, see if you can make an image of that shape, that classic car shape. See what what the lines of that would come out to be, Dana.
I just kind of have this kind of a
that kind of rounded, soft.
very rounded and soft. This kind of comes to mind.
Yeah, wonderful.
Put some old tires on it. I don't know why red is.
But your hand wants to put some red.
Yeah, my hand wants to put some red in there too. This definitely kind of, you know, real this arch.
That line.
This shape, this
what does that feel
you see
like?
It's repeated here again. It's just real soft. It's kind of like a rounded corner. To me, you know, it feels like it's the edge taken off of a corner.
That's wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah, and the cars these days, I mean, they're getting rounded again.
Yes, they are kind of.
Maybe that's a sign of
that something nice is
because
happening.
they got so angular in the late '60s and the '70s, and it just seems like they're kind of softening again. You know,
how marvelous that somehow this feels softened and feminine, and that kind of angular raciness of this line. It is true, isn't it, that the new postmodernism has more of these lines and
it's the Nouveau lines, the classic Deco and Nouveau lines are kind of coming back.
Which makes you wonder if somehow that kind of way of moving might surface again.
Softer,
Yeah, great. Notice how an exercise in active imagination in which Dana drew the car in her dream led to a better understanding of the choice she had at the crossroad. At the Dream Workshop, we talked at length about cars and other vehicles of transportation. Listen to some of the dreams that were told.
I'm driving a white Porsche down a straight road. I'm almost asleep as driving. but I am driving very well. I wake up and realize that there are other cars on the road and that I've dozed off. So I pull away from the middle of the road, increase my speed. As I increase my speed, I begin experiencing fear. The car is difficult to control, and I'm afraid that I'm going to lose control of the wheel. The gas gauge shows that the gas tank is almost empty. So I pull into a Shell station and ask the attendant, who was a young man, to fill up my tank. As he is filling up my tank, he commented on how clean and beautiful my car is. On the back of the hood of the engine, the Porsche engine is in the back of the car, not in the front. On the back of the hood of the engine, on the outside, is a little pull-out ashtray. He pulls out the ashtray, and I'm surprised to see that it has been used and that it's dirty, because I don't normally let people smoke in the car. Another man who knew the attendant begins to speak to me. He conned me into giving him some money, which I did. And as I drove away, he went back in the gas station and gave the attendant the money he had taken from me.
Without the dreamer's associations to images in the dream, it's difficult to know what such a dream might mean to or about her. But we can make certain assumptions about the dream as if it had come to any one of us. For example, driving along a very straight road in a beautifully clean little white Porsche would seem to most of us like a very easy, idyllic way of going through life, right? Things are pretty good. But then, almost asleep, the driver's almost asleep behind the wheel. That means trouble. It's a warning about being unconscious. This dreamer wakes up. It says she wakes up when she discovers that there are other cars on the road. Does that mean that she becomes conscious of other people having needs? Other ways of going along through her life? What is it she becomes conscious of? Such a dream about becoming conscious, waking up to life, is a very common dream about the struggle for consciousness in human life. Always, when we wake up, become conscious, trouble begins. For example, in her dream, after she wakes up, she discovers that she's almost out of gas, that she has a very little ashtray out on the hood of her car, that two men, the gas station attendants, fill her car up, but they con her out of money. So these are problems she runs into after she wakes up or begins to become conscious. Might the running out of gas implies a certain loss of energy or about to run out of energy? Might the dirty little ashtray on the hood symbolize some secret addiction which needs to be exposed? The men conning her out of money, do men in her life actually con her out of energy? Such a dream of the consciousness and the waking up to consciousness and the cost of such consciousness is a common dream for people to have as they're trying to grow in consciousness. In the Old Testament story of creation, for example, when Adam and Eve eat the fruit of the knowledge of the tree of good and evil, that is, they have some differentiated consciousness, they're thrown out of the Garden of Eden. They have to leave in shame and struggle to meet their own needs. That's true of us too. In this dream, the idyllic situation of the dreamer is disturbed by her waking up. She wakes up to her less than perfect life situation, and then she can do something about it. She can begin to struggle with her life, to really deal with conflict in a conscious way. In the next dream, the dreamer experiences herself outside her car, maybe outside her own life, as it were. Her car goes by itself. It goes without her being in the driver's seat. She doesn't even have the key. It runs along by itself, just running back down the driveway. It gets all four corners dented. She even lets it get the hood dented. It runs under a tractor. She's so passive in the dream. She doesn't get in the car or into her life. So I suggested to the dreamer, as she was telling the dream, that she tell the dream in the present tense in order to feel more into it, in order to feel more at cause about what happens to her car. Telling the dream in the present tense can help her feel more related to the drama of the dream. You will see as she tells the dream how her feeling about it, how her affect becomes more activated, and she feels herself to be more at cause. Hopefully, she can find a way to get her own keys, to get into her own car in the driver's seat, and to drive the car in such a way that it doesn't get so bunged up and it doesn't get run over by a tractor, as it were.
I'm in an old house, the house that I was raised in, and I'm approaching the garage to get into my vehicle. And before I get into the front seat, a man comes out of the house and says, "Let me get the car out of the garage for you." And I thank him and say that I can do perfectly fine on my own. I had difficulty getting the car in reverse, and once I did, I felt like I was outside of the car watching it move on its own, and there was a tractor in the driveway, and the car nicely went on its own and didn't miss a dent. All four corners were dented, and then I was going to try to stop it, but I thought I would just let it go on its own power, and I thought as long as all four corners got bumped, then I would also let it go underneath the tractor and let it also dent the roof or the hood of the car. So once the hood became dented, the car came to a screeching halt because it was underneath the tractor. So then I went inside the house because the man disappeared and he had the keys to the car. And I went inside the house to find the gentleman who took the keys. And there was a woman sitting at a desk like a secretary. And she told me that he wasn't in the house, that he had been gone, and that she had never seen him. And I remember getting so irate with her because I felt like she had betrayed me. And that was the end of the dream.
Could you tell the beginning of the dream again, starting with it in the present tense? I am at my...
I'm at the house. I'm at the house where I was raised.
And then?
And I was going from...
And I am?
And I'm going from the back door into the garage.
Mm-hmm. And
a man came outside.
And a man comes out.
Man comes outside and offers to back the car out of the garage for me. And I tell him, "Thank you, I can do it on my own."
And then
I had difficulty getting...
I have
difficulty.
See, you're doing it right now, right?
I have difficulty getting the car into reverse. But I am able to get it into reverse. The car starts moving on its own, and for some reason I'm now standing outside of the car and it's moving by itself. And all four corners get dented. Are getting dented.
Yeah, I don't know how you say that in the present, right? All four corners?
And then I feel like since all four corners are being dented, we may as well dent the hood.
Yeah.
So
Can you see when I'm saying, Diane, that I think you, particularly a dream like that, if you keep putting it in the present, you can really feel into it. You'll have more response to it. I'm sorry, but read your dream in the present when you read this time. Listen to this dream in which the dreamer is driving an old car.
I am alone driving an old black four-door Model T Ford. A large black bird is sitting on the back tire rear rim bumper, holding on tightly as I drive. When the car stops, and I drive quite a distance, when the car stops, I look back and see the bird is still there and it's vomiting repeatedly. In the dream. And just an additional note, I did work with this dream. I drew the birds, but also I did an active imagination, and in it I got in the car and I went to a mountain place in a lake. But when I got out of the car, it was now a blue-green shade, and it was a more contemporary car.
The dreamer used guided imagery to help ameliorate the dark feeling tone of the dream. She drove the car to a quiet mountain place, and in such driving, the color or the feeling about the car changed from black to a blue-green, you will notice. But such guided imagery left out a very important feature in the dream, the black bird on the bumper of the car. The dreamer would need to make very careful personal associations with this old black four-door Model T car. Was there ever such a car in her life? What are the associations with it? What memories about such a car? What thoughts about it? Who does she associate with such a car? To write carefully these associations would help her really get in touch with what the meaning of this old four-door Model T is in the dream. The black bird on the bumper has archetypal significance. There is a story about a black bird in Greek mythology. It's said that Apollo, who had so many loves he couldn't keep up with them all, charged a bird to watch over one of his loves. This bird was watching the lover, and the lover had an affair with another man, so the bird went to Apollo to tell him. And as the bird reported his lover's infidelity, Apollo became enraged at the bird for telling him this and turned the bird black and hurled him to the ground. So in that way it said that the crow became black. But this black bird is a teller of truth, of the truth about secrets, often in dreams. So this dreamer would do well to think about what secret, what dark secret might be on the back of this car, or whatever she associates to this car. And the bird vomiting it up would be nature's way of getting rid of some toxic substance. What secret, what dark secret on the back of this car might the dreamer need to face? She might actually feel sick herself, to face some memory from her past, or some feeling from her past that's very dark, and the truth needs to be known about it, needs to be vomited up. In facing such a reality in one's dreams, one is free to see how, as in this dream, the dreamer, for example, is driving around in that old car, and so it might free her to get about her life in a different way. She wouldn't be so stuck in an old mode of being if she could really work with this dream and process her associations with it and do active imagination about what if she listened to the bird, and what if she got in a different kind of car. How could she rewrite the dream in such a way that would free her to go about her life in a more present-day situation without being caught in old attitudes or old behaviors or old wounds from early childhood, perhaps?
I'm driving a car, and I turn in a driveway on a residential street. And it's night. I'm sitting in the driveway, and the window's rolled up, and I realize that I'm in the driveway of the rectory of the church, the Catholic church that I used to go to. And I'm sitting in the car looking at the door to the rectory, and the door is open and the light's on, but I can't get out of my car. And the window's up, and I look at the light in the door, and I sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. I could not get out of my car and go in there. And that has always been a very significant image.
Patty's very important recurrent dream could be processed through careful personal associations and active imagination. For example, what are her associations with the rectory? It seems as if this rectory has the door open and the lights on, which would imply that it invites her in. She could go in, she could see, she could be conscious of what's in there, but she's frozen in the car. Why is she frozen? She could do associations with what is it that locks her in the car? What is she so afraid of? I would guess it's fear that freezes us or paralyzes us in one place. It says in the dream that she has the windows rolled up and the car is just stopped in the driveway. I cannot go in, she says. So what if she did active imagination about what would happen if she goes in? What is it she's afraid will happen in that rectory? Through weaving together her associations about what that rectory meant to her in the past, and what she might imagine happening if she were able to get out of the car and go in, Patty might discover some freedom from being so paralyzed in her life. The dream says she's blocked. She's parked in this driveway and can't get on. So it makes one wonder if perhaps this is a clue to some paralysis in her life. Is it as if her own motivation is stuck right there? And through doing the associations, working with the dream, some really ongoing dream work, particularly with this recurrent dream, I would think the dreamer might really discover what fears or what experiences have paralyzed her and might enable her to get her car going, to get motivated, to get on with her life and out of that driveway into the world.
I'm trying to go into a parking lot with my car. I have to squeeze my car between two closely parked cars to get in the lot. It was night in the lot and I couldn't see. I was afraid I was going to hit someone, but in spite of that, I didn't stop. I kept driving along, wondering whether or not I was about to run into another car or about to run over a person. And I was afraid that I was going to hit somebody or damage the car, but I still didn't stop. I put the top down, although it wasn't clear what that meant because it wasn't a convertible. But nonetheless, I put the top down. But I still couldn't see. And then I was afraid that someone would mug or attack me. But I still drove slowly forward nonetheless.
This dream nicely focuses on the dreamer's ability to still keep going forward very slowly and carefully, in spite of many obstacles and many fears. For example, the dreamer keeps going even though he has to squeeze in between other cars, a feeling of there's not enough room for him. He's afraid he'll hit somebody. He's afraid he'll run into another car. All these fears. Then there's this wonderful image of he puts the top down even though it's not a convertible, which the Dream Workshop shared laughter with him. Putting the top down, might that be a pun, like putting the top down? Might it mean that in some way he's able to expose himself, to be really open to the world and open to his fears and really face what's around him? Or might it mean in the punning way, putting the top down, bringing down some authority or some idealization that he may have held that may have helped create the fears? It's interesting that when he puts the top down, he's afraid then that someone will hurt him, and yet he keeps going. You wonder if the dream compensates for an attitude of inflation in which he really doesn't experience his fears and is too inflated, or does the dream show his heroic effort, help him see himself as somebody who can keep going in spite of the many fears in his life? This dreamer could work with the dream doing personal associations and using some active imagination about what might happen if he puts the top up, for example, or what might happen as he keeps going. And through personal associations and also realizing the context of the dream, what was going on in his life at this time? Was he inflated, or was he afraid and needing the encouragement of the dream to keep going in spite of his fears? I think the dream could be a wonderful help to him in seeing himself as someone who can overcome his fears and keep going. So how does it feel to hear, I'm driving, I'm driving, I'm driving, I'm driving? Kind of say it like a mantra. I'm driving, I'm driving, I'm driving, I'm driving, I'm driving, I'm driving. And we didn't hear any dreams about I'm being driven. I'm being driven, I'm being driven, I'm being driven, I'm being driven, I'm being driven. But I parked, right? I park and get a ticket. What are some of the associations that come to you about car? You know, car is a metaphor for driven. It's an automobile.
Right, life, how we handle life.
What?
Trying to get somewhere.
Trying to get...
It gets you from some place to another place. It's a means of transportation.
And that's an interesting words, right? We talk about transference, transcending, transporting, right? Carrying between this and that, driven, transition.
I see it as an extension of myself and the way I move in the world, at least in the world today. Horse and buggy days, I wouldn't say that. But
I see it as the way I'm getting through life at any given time.
So what if you have a dream that you've lost your car? What have you lost?
Your power,
And
your
something
power.
for temporarily, some feeling of power or
Energy.
Or I've lost my motivation. If you think of the dreams use language like metaphoric language. So a car is a metaphor for driving or driven or for motivation, right? What drives us? And how do you get around in the world?
What about shoes? I keep losing shoes. Or
Losing
finding
shoes.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
finding just one of
And it's a similar motif, isn't it? We wear different shoes for different activities, right? And shoes are the way we're related to the earth. So if you kind of think through what do shoes mean to you personally, like for some people shoes may have been a point of contention with one's mother that you couldn't buy the shoes you wanted, so they're personal associations. But archetypally, we wear shoes for doing various activities, right? So shoes are like identity. And remember Cinderella and her slipper? She had a glass slipper, right, of illusions. Yeah.
And different types of cars that you're in, maybe the same as shoes, but different types of cars, obviously it's significant. Could that be like an extension of your persona or how you see you're relating to the world or how you're traveling?
Yes, and it's very important, the individual car, like your red Lamborghini for a while you see, is a particular kind of energy, a particular kind of motivation, or also car can sometimes, particularly for men, be an anima symbol. Right? The cars, you know how boys polish their cars, and that it's sort of the first relationship to something outside themselves that they love. And,
I used to have a lot of dreams of buses,
Uh-huh.
and it changed after a while because it used to be that there would be a bus driver, and often it would be a black bus driver, and a number of it used to be a recurring image, and a number of times I would lose something. Like I remember one dream in which I got on the bus and my child was with me, but the bus left my child, and then we went back and I didn't know where my child went. And then the dreams eventually changed. The image of the bus changed to where I became the driver of the bus. And then after that, I stopped dreaming about being in a bus and driving a bus. And later I had more car
dreams. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So what about bus? What is bus as a way of transportation?
Collective, being taken.
Not having as much control, have to rely on the public transportation.
being told where to go.
Yeah, well, you know, it would be like I was out of control. The bus driver was taking me places, and often I would get off the bus and I wouldn't know where I was, and then I didn't know how to get another bus back. So it was always like an out of control feeling.
So the bus is a mode of transportation that the group goes with. Anybody can ride the bus, right? You have to go where the group goes. What about train?
It's on a track. But it's on a track. It's really predetermined.
How about a plane?
Let's talk one at a time. What? A motorhome? A motorhome. What would you associate with a motorhome?
Well, I'm thinking it's my nest, my shelter. But I mean, I don't live in one.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to put my house on the road, or hit the road, or movement.
Shifting, and maybe a motorhome doesn't really belong anywhere, right? On one hand, but on the other hand, a motorhome can park anywhere. So,
What does losing a car represent?
losing a car can either be compensatory for being too driven. See, it's as if when you lose something in a dream, it's almost as if it says either in compensation, it can say the psyche's taken it. You know, like the briefcase that's lost, it's taken away from the ego. The ego loses something. When the ego loses something, it goes into the unconscious. So it can compensate for being too attached to your car, right? Or on the other hand, if it's symbolizing where you are in your everyday life, losing one's car can be loss of energy. You know, sometimes people dream they've lost their car as a symbol of having really lost any way to get around, that they have no motivation, right? No automobile, no self-motivation, right? It's like a metaphor. Is that a pun? Automobile?
You commented about the triangle, being a symbol of action. I had a series of dreams in which there was a three-wheeled car that actually would turn into an airplane. I mean, I would be actually hanging on the outside of it, and it would just take off. This thing would be flying. It was total action. I mean, and then eventually they came down to four-wheel car again.
Right. So what about a three-wheel car? Do you know the little metaphoric phrase of like you're operating on 2 cylinders or 3 cylinders or something? Jung writes a lot about the psychological functions in relationship to the 4 tires of a car, that we need all 4 functions operating in order to get along very well in life. So when you have 3 wheels, it means you're operating on 3 functions, or often people will dream of having a flat tire. These are kind of common collective dreams, that one function is out of whack, right, not operating. And particularly when you have a dream like that, that you're going along on 3 functions, and it transforms into, it even gets more out of touch, right? I get really up in the air with it and trying to compensate for the missing wheel, maybe. So there's cars, buses, trains, golf carts, people movers. Interesting, your dream last night was the people mover is on water, right, with our work with the unconscious. Yeah.
What about boats?
And boats. What about boats? And in boats, they're ships, right, which carry a great many people, right? They're little sailboats, they're speed boats, right? Now, what about boats? That's a relationship to the water, right? To feeling, the feminine, unconscious, right? To the depths. Ships, archetypally, have to do with, like buses are about the collective, ships, archetypally, are about a collective way of relating to the unconscious. So there's the ship of state, the ship of matrimony, right? Ships, for some people, are like a great mother symbol because they contain a whole bunch of stuff that's needed, right? You can say mothers get bad shrift in every dream image. You know that mothers are like tanks, mothers are like ships, right? When we work with trying to get out of the mother and get on our own ground. Sometimes people have a dream of many, many ships, as if all the cargo of life, all the business of life is carried in collective containers, not in an individual mobile way. If you think how much easier it is to get along with a sailboat, you know, where you've got wind and the water working together as a way of going and relating to the water. Yeah?
I'd like to relate a ship dream, but it wasn't much of a ship. It was more or less like a raft. Okay, so I was on this raft, but I think I hired someone to take me to the other shore. And so we were, and it was really uncomfortable. It was like mainly wooden planks, and I wasn't comfortable. So we were on this ocean, and this man or somebody was rowing, and then the ocean started getting really, really choppy and really, really black. And I said, I want to go back. I changed my mind. I want to go back. He said, no, we've come too far now. You've come too far now. You cannot go back. We have to go ahead. So I hung on to the boards.
Just barely a raft built.
Yeah. It was
if you think of the difference in a raft and a ship. You see, a raft is like protection. Swiss Family Robinson, not much protection, not very steady for the ocean, right? A ship is built out of steel in molds, you know, that can carry lots of people for many, many years, right? And your raft is more like Swiss Family Robinson, right? Constructed out of natural.
I wanted to go there, but then it was too much. I mean, I was too scared.
Yeah,
and he
sure.
said, you've gone too far now. You can't go back.
What, Jim?
Huck and Jim sailed the raft on the river of life.
Yeah.
In Huckleberry Finn.
Yeah, he does, doesn't he? He's on a river, not the ocean, and he has a long pole, and he knows what he's doing.
He's successful.
He's successful, right? He doesn't have to go in a ship, right? He can have his own raft. That's right. And what other transportation? What about airplanes, right? What do you think of when you dream of an airplane?
Well, going up, spiritual, I guess.
In the sky?
Up in the sky, up close to God, yeah.
They're going very long distances. Across the country or a long ways away.
I hate flying, and when I have to, I always have dreams of airplanes before. It's like my psyche is getting me ready.
Right, you have preparation dreams, right? Yeah. Airplane is an interesting symbol because it's also a very big womb. You know the feeling when you walk into an airplane, it's like Jonah going into the belly of the whale, right? You're in there till they spit you up on the other side. It's a very, like whale in the sky, right? That can cause a lot of anxiety because we're so removed from the driver's seat, right? I want to kind of take a little turn when I realize I'm saying removed from the driver's seat. Another very important thing, and I think one of the most crucial things to watch in dream work, is what is the dream ego doing? See, this business of being in the driver's seat or being driven, right? Or, letting a man try to help you with the car, but you take it yourself, right? That what's the ego's relationship, the dream ego's relationship to the activity in the dream? Now, there are some dreams, and I've written this down, maybe I can just remember it all. And there are some dreams in which the ego isn't in it at all. There was a large green snake coiled in a golden bowl, right? There's no dream ego in that. It's just an image, right? Or there was a horse's head with one eye. That's a kind of relationship to the psyche in which one experiences something that the ego is not in at all. I'm very unrelated to it. So, like an archetypal dream often is just like that. A large green snake is coiled in a golden bowl, right? Or a ship is sailing up the river and I see fireworks going off. I'm not doing anything. I just see something. So when the dream ego isn't in the dream at all, that's a sense that there's no relationship to the event yet, that the dream ego has to make relationship with that. When the ego is acted upon by an element from the unconscious, like the dog bites me, right? I'm being driven by the car. It's that the dream ego is being acted upon by the unconscious. So the dreamer's responsibility in waking life is to see if that's an action that really bodes well for the dreamer, or does the dream ego need to take more responsibility, right? The most related image I know of is dancing, right? Or like riding a horse well is a very ancient symbol of right relationship between the ego and the unconscious. You know, there's a hotel in Sorrento, Italy, that called Bellevue Cyrene, and the only pictures on the walls are of women riding horses. It's a wonderful experience, this big old hotel. But that's a very old image of a right relationship to the unconscious. You know, when you ride a horse, you can't just drive the horse. You have to really pay attention to the horse because the horse actually has more power than you do. So you have to relate correctly to a horse to keep from getting killed. But to keep from having the horse run away with you, you have to keep tight reins on the horse. So one image of really right relationship between the ego and the unconscious is rider and horse. Another is dancing, right? Particularly between the masculine and the feminine. If the ego is in bed with somebody, right, it's your bedfellow, so the ego's kind of, we say bedfellows, like lined up with the other person. If the ego is having a sexual relationship, it's like the two have become one. So that expresses from the view of the unconscious that the ego and the other are one. The ego is identified with the masculine or with the feminine, whatever the other is. Or however close their lovemaking is, you see, would express the relationship. But to watch what your dream ego is doing, and you will notice as you work with your dreams, that the dream ego actually becomes much more easily related. There's much less violence from elements of the unconscious toward the ego. There's a much less conflictual relationship with elements of the unconscious. Things continue to go better the more you work with dreams. Yeah.
We have looked at many means of transportation. Cars, which are a very individual way of getting about. Buses, which carry a lot of people, a collective means of transportation. Trains, which go on one track. Airplanes flying in the sky. Bicycles as a more individual, natural way of going. But these means of transportation in dreams symbolize our way of going through our life, or our motivation. How are we getting around? What motivates us? And whether or not that vehicle is in good shape tells about what our motivation is like. If we run out of gas, if we run out of energy,
Is this car all beat up and not working anymore? We've looked at several ways in which the dreamer or the ego is related to a car or the bus or the train. How's the ego related to the archetype of transportation or of being carried or carrying? Continue to join us as we further explore the ancient ritual of telling and retelling dreams.